So in the interest of being on schedule, I am going to abbreviate my introduction of Heather Fitzpatrick, CEO of Wellspring. Heather's been at this podium many times. She's well known to us. She has done so much for our club and for our community. And I would like to welcome Heather and her team to the stage.
Thank you, President-elect Kim. And good afternoon, fellow Rotarians. Hi, Jimmy. So 10 years ago, this club celebrated our 100-year anniversary. And when we did that, we wanted to commemorate it with a project that would be a huge contribution to our community and a lasting impact on our community. And we did. We built a home for an organization that helps families facing homelessness find homes of their own, Wellspring Family Services. For the last 127 years, Wellspring Family Services has been working with families in crisis. Today, Wellspring helps families facing homelessness find or retain housing. Our free store provides children with clothing, hygiene supplies, toys, and books. And Wellspring delivers quality early education for children 1 to 5 who are experiencing homelessness. Wellspring also works upstream to prevent homelessness. Wellspring's Employee Assistance Program connects employees with counseling services and other resources that they need to avoid the sorts of problems that actually result in homelessness. Wellspring makes a difference for thousands of individuals every year. As Rotarians, we can take great pride that we helped make that possible when we built the Rotary Support Center for Families. In the next 20 minutes, my Wellspring colleagues and I are going to give you a quick overview of one of the least visible homeless populations in our community, families. You'll hear how the Rotary Support Center for Families improves lives and helps families break the cycle of family homelessness. And we're going to begin by introducing you to family homelessness and talking about how it is different from other types of homelessness. I'd like to start by asking you to close your eyes. Now, I can see you, so if you don't close your eyes, I'm going to know. So close your eyes. Now, I want you to imagine a homeless person. What do you see in your mind's eye? Now you can open your eyes again. My guess is that the person you saw was male, probably in need of a shower, maybe battling addiction or a mental health issue. Maybe you saw a tent in the background. That's the common image of homelessness in our community, and it's the image that is perpetuated by the media, and like Como's recent documentary, Seattle is Dying. But it's not the face of family homelessness. Most families who are experiencing homelessness are not living in the tents we see along the sides of the roads. They're hiding. The kids are couch surfing, staying with their basketball coach or a Girl Scout friend or a friend from school while their parents sleep in a car. Or maybe they're at a shelter and they're together, or maybe they're together in their car and they're on a secluded street where they're less likely to be detected. They're hiding because parents who can't provide safe and stable housing for their children risk losing those children to foster care. And that scares them to death. I'm a mom. I know there are a lot of moms and dads in this room. It frightens me, and I'm not in that scenario. But the differences don't stop there. Families experience homelessness for very different reasons than the chronic adult population does. To give you some insight into what a typical family experiencing homelessness is like, I'm going to refer you to Derek Taylor, who is our Wellspring's evaluations manager. He collects and analyzes data to help us better understand our clients and their needs. And Derek's going to share a little bit about what we know about the families we serve at the Rotary Support Center for Families. Derek.
Thank you. Family homelessness is a poverty problem, and the discrimination faced by many of our clients often makes stabilization more difficult than it should be. Families experiencing homelessness are likely to be headed by a single parent, generally a mother. That parent is likely to be younger with young children. She hasn't had much opportunity to build up a reserve to address a challenge, and she is more likely to be a person of color. 35% of the families we serve lost their homes because their rent went up. And they had 30 days to find and lease new housing they could afford, near their jobs, with access to services for their family, and find the money to pay first and last month's rent and moving fees, because it's expensive to move. All this has to happen in 30 days. 25% of the families who become homeless are fleeing domestic violence, often leaving everything behind. 17% lose their homes due to a job loss, 12% because a family member became ill and they either suffered loss of income due to reduced hours for caretaking or became overwhelmed by medical bills. Do you notice anything in those statistics? I didn't say anything about mental health or addiction, two elements of that common image of homelessness. When you compare families experiencing homelessness with low-income families who remain stably housed, there are no significant differences in rates of mental health or addiction or employment. This means there is no correlation between mental health and addiction with family homelessness. Once again, this is important. When comparing low-income families who suffer earth-shaking events in their lives and remain housed with low-income families who lose their housing, there are no differences in the rate of mental health issues, addiction, or employment. Parents facing homelessness hide their homelessness to avoid losing their children. They also hide their situation because it's embarrassing, or they are worried they might lose their job. They are even more likely to worry if they are a single female head of household, a person of color, or low income, because they know, as I do, that appearances make a difference. And let me illustrate with a story. When I worked as a case manager, I received a call from one of my clients, a young woman of color with a child who had experienced homelessness. She had a medical issue that was causing her distress. But an incorrect setting in the DSHS client database prohibited her from receiving care. She had been requesting a change by phone and in person for 2 weeks, but couldn't get anyone to help her. She called me and explained her situation. I met her several days later at the DSHS office. We approached the desk when our number was called. I slid my card across the desk, explained who I was, and told the gentleman my client needed help. Once again, my client made the same request she made previously, but this time the service provider behind the desk simply stated, "Okay," and changed her status. So what changed? My client knew what she needed. She clearly qualified to have her status changed. And she made the same request she had for 2 weeks, but this time she had my help. Pardon me. People of color, single women with children, veterans, people with disabilities, and LGBTQ individuals all face discrimination when it comes to seeking services, finding employment, or obtaining housing. One of the most important things we do is help our clients to be seen and heard. Thank you.
Thanks, Derek. So you heard from Derek that most people, most families are not falling into homelessness because of addiction or mental health issues. They find themselves facing homelessness because something happens and they lack the resources or the safety net they need to help them get through that challenge in their life. Family homelessness is a poverty issue, and it's cyclical. So raise your hand if you have a child at any age. That's most of us, right? So assuming your child was born in the United States, when he or she was born, he or she had a 2 to 3% chance of experiencing homelessness at some point in his or her life. If you experienced homelessness with your child when they were young, particularly if they were under the age of 5 when the brain development is at its most rapid, the chance of that child experiencing homelessness again in their lifetime jumped to 30%. One time homeless, 15 times the likelihood of homelessness, 30%. That's the beginning of the cycle of homelessness. Children of families who've experienced homelessness, they are at the bottom of the economic ladder. They don't have any financial resources, and they don't have connections to help them, to serve as a safety net. And because they've experienced early adverse child experiences, they are more likely to have difficulty relating well to other people. That's going to cause them to be more likely to have problems in school and have more difficulty holding down a job. Those issues can exacerbate underlying mental health issues or drive substance abuse or other dangerous behaviors. That cycle perpetuates when they have children of their own, because even the most stable of those children is most likely to experience homelessness again when they have small children. Through the Rotary Support Center for Families, Wellspring interrupts that cycle in 2 important ways. We work with adults to help them find and retain housing, and we work with children to help them address the trauma in an early learning environment so they are more likely to succeed in kindergarten and beyond. For more about the impact that the Rotary Support Center for Families is making, I'd like to introduce Walter Washington, Wellspring's Senior Director of Housing, and Bivette Urbis, our Director of the Early Learning Center.
Friends, good afternoon. I lead Wellspring's work in securing housing for families experiencing homelessness and supporting the stability needs of recently housed families. Our work includes eviction prevention, rapid rehousing, and housing intervention. One of our unique advantages is our long-term commitment to our families. We don't simply move a family into housing and then walk away, case closed. We stay connected and build communities around our families. This is the work of ending the cycle of family homelessness. Wellspring's focus on the family is both distinct and ambitious. I've had the privilege of working with multiple sub-demographics within the homelessness arena. I've worked with children at Treehouse, with homeless teens at Youth Care, and with single adults at Compass Housing Alliance. I've learned that a look at the holistic family, adults with children, a multi-generational approach will make the largest lasting impact. If I could offer an example with a story. My previous tenure as Emergency Services Director at Compass Housing Alliance, I was responsible for 9 distinct programs, including the highest volume single adult program in the county, the Client Services Office. This space provided a mailing address for single adults and families who don't currently have one, a resource that many of us take for granted, and certainly a necessity for those who are awaiting critical, time-sensitive documents. Due to its volume, I spent a significant amount of my supervision time in this program. Often, I would recognize participants who I had known as a child. One such individual was Donna. Donna and I had went to middle school together and shared many of the same classes. We became phone buddies and frequently passed notes in class. Sometimes my friends and I would ride bikes to where Donna was staying. She would join us and just ride around the neighborhood. Figuring out where to meet Donna was a difficult experience. It was always somewhere new, usually surrounded by people in distress, and always had the feeling as if we were rescuing her. This was the life side of our classroom friendship, where Donna was habitually absent, late for class, and had significant behavioral issues. At some point in our 8th grade year, she suddenly was no longer at our school. I wondered, what happened to my classroom friend, my bike riding buddy? I would not see Donna again until one day at the client services office. I felt the eyes and interest of someone in the line whom I vaguely remember without a context. Disheveled with 2 large black bags in tow, she leaves her place in line to approach me. You won't remember me, but I know who you are. You are Walter from middle school. I'm a little embarrassed, but I need help. Tears are now coming down her eyes. You were one of my best friends, and my life has been hell for as long as I can remember. I don't know what to do. But I have to find a way to get myself together, to get my kids back. They deserve better from me. I was able to get Donna a shelter referral for that night, but what Donna needed was an agency to have intervened. When her children were young and in her care, she needed an agency like Wellspring to intervene a generation prior, when she was a child. For her and her 6 siblings, Donna found herself in a cycle of chronic homelessness, instability, and trauma.
Hello, everyone. As Heather mentioned, the Early Learning Center welcomes children in our community who are either currently experiencing homelessness or whose families have recently experienced homelessness. And children attend at no cost to their family, and their tuition is covered through scholarships and private funding. I'm going to share a story with you that illustrates how early childhood trauma can have a devastating impact on a child and how early intervention can make a difference. 10 years ago, when the Early Learning Center moved into the brand new Rotary Support Center for Families, a child that I'll refer to as Michael was enrolled into the program. He was about 3 years old and lived with his mom. She had recently fled a domestic violence situation and was living in an emergency shelter. By the time Michael arrived at the Early Learning Center, he had been kicked out of 10 different early learning programs due to the challenging behaviors that he exhibited. Imagine being that little and receiving the message that you don't belong. Imagine being his parent. You have to work, but you can't. You don't have consistent childcare for your child. The Early Learning Center has a no expulsion policy, and this information was shared with Mom during the time of enrollment. But when she came to Wellspring, she was not trusting of staff. She was on edge. She was expecting to hear that Michael would be kicked out of the program at any moment. Michael's behaviors presented themselves right away in the classroom. But Michael had a remarkable teacher who supported him and helped him work through his daily outbursts and destructive behaviors. By using a trauma-informed approach, she helped to name and put words to the emotions that he was feeling. Michael's mom was able to form a trusting relationship with the teacher, and the teacher became a tremendous support to both of them. The family support specialist working with Michael's mom referred her to the Early Learning Center's early childhood mental health therapist. The therapist supported Mom in an office setting, and Michael received play therapy in the classroom. The teacher, family support specialist, and therapist formed a supported network, a safety net, around Michael's mom to assist her with her struggle around domestic violence, the domestic violence that she had experienced, as well as help with parenting Michael. One day, Michael arrived at school, and his behaviors had escalated. He broke a lot of classroom items, threw things, kicked, cursed, and he even held a small plastic knife to the throat of one of the little girls in the classroom. Through his mom, we discovered that Michael's dad had found where he and his mom were living. He held them at knife point, and the police had to rescue them. This is the situation that Michael was trying to make sense of through his play. The therapist met more often with Michael for play therapy and also met jointly with him and his mom. Over time, Michael began to feel safe and secure. He was able to express his emotions in more appropriate ways when they rose up in him. Mom secured housing and employment, and her parenting skills improved. Michael stayed with Wellspring's program until he transitioned to kindergarten. Mom sent periodic updates to his teacher, and we learned that Michael was doing well. Now, years later, here's an update. Just last week, our Wellspring team saw a photograph of Michael standing proudly in his junior ROTC uniform. He looked so handsome and mature. Our hearts melted when we saw his photo. Michael has come such a long way on his journey of overcoming the impacts of early childhood trauma.
At Wellspring, we know that early intervention for children who've experienced the trauma of homelessness in our community makes a difference. We also know that it takes more than a set of keys to help a family regain stability. It takes a support system, a safety net. Fortunately, that support system already exists. There are literally thousands of organizations around the region who can help families gain the skills and access the resources they need to regain stability. The challenge for families is finding them. Wellspring can help. We can help families successfully navigate that support system, connecting them to resources more quickly than they ever would on their own. Now, there's no way to show this on a slide, but there's new construction going on in the house that Rotary built. It's the construction of a technology system. Technology that will enable us to connect and collaborate more rapidly and more effectively with other service providers in the community. Technology that will enable us to connect families in need with the services they need, and it will all be delivered from the Rotary Support Center for Families. If you haven't visited us recently or ever, I hope you'll stop by. There are a couple of events coming up on the screen. A birthday party for the building we're in, and a service project this weekend. And I know Einer's going to be there, so I hope you'll join us. There are other opportunities to engage on the flyer that's on your table. Unfortunately, we're a little short for time on questions of getting from Ken. So in our last few minutes, I'd like to ask you to join in a small service project. Derek commented earlier in the presentation that one of the most important things that we can do is make our clients feel like they are seen and heard. And you can help us do that today. I hope you'll take a few minutes to write a note of encouragement or inspiration on this book plate that's on your table. There are pens that look like this and book plates on your table. Take a few minutes and just write a note of encouragement or inspiration to a child who's going to pick up that book in our Early Learning Center or receive it in our baby boutique. Write a note letting them know you care. It will make a difference. When you're done, please leave them on the table and our team will collect them. President-elect Kim will ring the bell when the time for writing is complete. Thank you. Thanks to my colleagues and for being here, but also thank you for helping children feel the warmth of your support. We appreciate it.